I got to try to get to shore. So I'm literally just naked in the middle of the night. And it's pretty cold. Like the water was pretty chilly.
Get inspired. Transform your life. Welcome to Best Interest Radio.
All right, so today on the podcast, we have my friend Grant Richard Alexander Hatcher. And that is an epic name that goes well with an epic story that he's about to share. So, Ryan, I really hope you're ready for story time because, like, I'm super pumped. I'm drinking my, decaf coffee. And I'm super pumped to just, like, listen to your story. I read about Mark. I almost called you Mark. I don't know. Like, we're gonna call you Mark too. We're gonna add that to one of your names. Grant Richard Alexander Hatcher. Mark.
Yeah.
Hey, just as a fun fact, my middle name is Alexander too. So
it's a popular one.
It is.
It's a popular one.
It's a popular middle name too for some reason.
Yes. My best friend growing up's middle name is Alexander as well.
I guess it's a popular first name too. But there's a lot of first and middle Alexanders.
I haven't heard like anybody introduce themselves to me and be like, "Hi, I'm Alexander." I don't think I've ever actually had that happen.
I don't know. I feel like I want to have another kid now and get him to introduce himself like that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm good with 3 kids.
Don't even name him Alexander. Just introduce yourself.
I'm gonna start introducing myself as Alexander.
Yeah,
my middle name, whatever. I go by my middle name now, not Jordan.
Yeah.
I had so many nicknames growing up that like I kind of like I don't really identify with names, if that makes sense. Like names aren't a big deal to me. It's like okay, because like I grew up and my family called me Gordo because I walked like Alf, like you know that old TV show that puppet alien. So his name's Gordon Shumway. So because I walked like him when I was a toddler, they called me Gordo. And
Gordo.
Yeah, and then I grew up and then I started playing like video games and stuff. But I guess before that actually I was 14 playing football and everybody started calling me Puff because at football practice one day I would take my puffer after like each lap and like before drills and stuff, and I like took my puffer and I went and did this drill and I just like smoked this kid like on my team during practice, and my coach was like, "Oh, you're all puffed up now, hey Puff." And everybody thought it was hilarious. Like a bunch of like 13, 14-year-old boys thought it was freaking the funniest thing ever. So everybody started calling me Puff since then. And it was probably funny too because I was like a chubby 14-year-old. I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with the funniness of it, or just the way the coach expressed it. It was also just hilarious because I took my puffer all the time. And then people thought it was because I smoked weed growing up. I'm like, no, it's
well, as soon as you said it, I was like, you're like, I pulled out, and I was like, I thought you had a little toke or something.
No, I didn't even start smoking weed till after. Like, I smoked so much weed in high school, and I don't really anymore. But I kind of lived up to my name there for a bit. And I also took my puffer a lot too. It's not really
That's
good.
Funny, man.
My asthma actually went away when I changed my life. Just a fun fact for the listener.
That's cool. I had a couple asthma attacks as a kid, and it was actually I'd realized in the time too that it was an emotional thing for me. It was a holding in anger while playing a sport. Like is when it happened both times, and I got diagnosed with asthma. Mom says different things, but it's like I vividly remember those 2 asthma attacks that I had, the only 2, and it was like because I was like,
Oh, I could, that would make sense. I was a pretty freaking angry kid, so like, honestly, my coaches and my teammates used to get me pissed off so that I could just like perform better because I just go out and take all my anger and aggression out on the field. And like,
so you're like the water boy, basically. You're saying like.
Was that what the water boy did?
It was like, he was like the nicest, kindest guy, like kind of a simple dude. And then somebody got really mad at him and then he tackled them and they're like, wow, we want you. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's such a good movie. I completely forgot about that. I'm gonna have to like rewatch that.
I don't want to check that out. Yeah.
We'll do this podcast in 2 hours because I'm gonna watch that movie really quick. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I'll wait here, man. Tell me how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, and then I started playing Halo, and I played that competitively. I was like semi-professional. I went to like an MLG tournament in Toronto when I was like 14 or 15, and I was like hardcore geek mode there.
Dude, that's pretty epic. Yeah.
It
Yeah. I
was
got into
fun.
gaming a little bit, but I didn't, not that level, but I liked it. Like I played it a bit, played a little bit of Call of Duty and stuff. And like, speaking of nicknames, man, like I have probably like 1,000 different nicknames that I was given. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's like our family, like where we're from in Cape Breton too. Like we just were kind of like weird and just made up like different sounds for each other. And then like having a G name, it's just like G this, G that, G everything, you know, G baby, G money, G, you know, all these different
Yeah, that's
like
true.
G
That's true.
things that you can think of. G, just G.
Yeah.
Uncle G when I became an uncle. Like my nephews are, I don't even know if they know my name. Like actually, like one's 21 and like I'm just Uncle G, you know, like
Yeah.
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 But playing basketball too growing up. So like all sorts of G names, G money, G this, all sorts of things. So
Yeah.
a lot of nicknames.
So the moral of the story is names don't matter. Just like call people whatever you want.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's cool though. I like my name though. Like I do like Grant, you know, it's not a super common name. It's not like a super different name either, but it's like you don't hear a lot of them anyway. I've only met several, but yeah. It's always interesting when I meet one though. It's like, okay, it's like, what's this guy all about? You know, I'm like, are we the same? Are we different? You know, obviously different, but there's something when you meet a Grant, or like for me, because it's like I don't meet a lot of them, you know. So it's just like,
Yeah.
okay. It's like
It,
kind of wonder who they are as a human being, you know?
do you find it's kind of like funny? Like when you meet somebody with the same name, it's like I meet a Jordan. I'm like, oh, your name is Jordan. It's like for some reason there's this like unsaid subconscious special connection between you two. It's like, oh, we have the same name. Like we like know each other without even knowing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel that. I also feel this like primordial, like we need to fight to the death right now. There can only be one. Like,
Yeah, there's a
yeah.
little bit of both.
Maybe that's like
contrast.
Yeah, it's like my Aries nature. Like, okay, we need to fight to the death now. Whoever wins
Yeah, let's fight to the death.
is the Grant.
Yeah. Yeah, but names are anyways, that's a lot of names. I'm actually wondering right now, like how many people in the world who have like legally registered their nickname as like their legal name. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
happened lots of times.
I think a lot. I think now too. Yeah.
I want to know, like now I want to know how many legal names you can actually have. Because like now I could just straight up go register all my names. Jordan, Alexander, Gordon Shumway,
Puffy.
Best, Puff, Best Aside, J Best 55, all the other
Best
all the Xbox gamer tags that like I used for like those 2-month free trial accounts I used to make. So like and like anything anybody's ever called me, I'll just put on one identification, birth certificate, paper, whatever. That's a whole other story. Like fuck birth certificates and identification. But
yeah.
anyway, I just swore on my podcast. Am I allowed to swear on my own podcast?
It depends on you, man. You're the owner. You're the person.
Am I gonna get censored by like Spotify or something? Anyway,
yeah.
you're gonna like put this podcast as explicit content, and
yeah.
It's explicit because we're actually gonna talk about Grant. Enough rambling. That's a new word.
It is. I like it.
Is anybody named Randy listening? That you could totally use that. Like I'm just randling right now.
Ah, classic Randall. Randling away.
That's our Randall. Randall's probably sending me a message right now as we speak.
I know a Randall.
Do you know
knew
Randall?
a Randall.
I should get him listening.
Just one. I only ever met one. He was a Randall through and through, as I would have
really?
ever imagined a Randall to be. Yeah.
Send him this podcast. Anyway,
met him at summer camp for 6 days, like when I was like 11. That was the only time. So I hope he's doing good. Yeah, I hope you're doing good, Randall, if you're out there.
Yeah, he's good. He just told me. So yeah, I came across Grant's Facebook posts, I think it was, and it was just an epic. Like whoever's listening, you have to know that we live on the east coast of Canada, called the Maritimes. I don't know if they call it the Maritimes in the States, but anyways, we live in the east coast of Canada, and in New Brunswick, and we're just surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. Lots of lobster, all that stuff, and it's just like a classic East Coast Canadian story that like I read, and it was like so well expressed by you. And I'll include, like, if I could actually get a copy, like, after you just talk, you tell me off the tip of your heart the story.
Yeah.
I'll get a copy of like the written version, and I'll attach it to this podcast. I can put it on my website too if you want.
Yeah, I can probably just give you the link to it. Honestly, like it's still there. Like it's still.
Is it a Facebook post or is it on like a website?
Just a Facebook post, man. Yeah, I wrote it. Yeah, I just get started. I guess kind of like it was. It all happened. I'll tell the story in a sec, but like I was so embarrassed by the story, to be honest. Like I was so embarrassed, like. Because I'm in Nova Scotia, so I'm from Nova Scotia. And I was just so embarrassed because I am from Nova Scotia, and this is something that I should know could happen, and I've camped many times. Like I'm not like not there's anything wrong, but like I've lived in the outdoors, you know what I mean? So that's like made all this all embarrassing. So I didn't even share the story until like 2 weeks afterwards, that I was like, okay, like somebody might get a laugh out of this. Like, I've seen some serious things in my life, so it's like, if I can do something, to help make somebody laugh a little bit, like I'm down, so that's when I finally wrote the story out. And I was just riding on a bus back from Cape Breton to Halifax, because my motorcycle had broken down on the trip. And I just wrote it on my cell phone as a Facebook post and posted it. And it was so long, and it was like, I like promote my business and things in social media. So I'm kind of like in tune with what catches, what doesn't, and I was like, this is so long, like nobody's going to read it. And I posted it like at like 12 in the afternoon, and it was just like boom, 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 boom. Within 10, 15 minutes, it just started like lighting up, and it like blew up. It was crazy. Like it went full on proper viral. But yeah, the whole story, man, it started, I was making the trip from Halifax to Cape Breton, which is about a 5-hour drive. And I was leaving late, and I was on a motorcycle, and it's end of August, so late summer. And I was going to go try to make the whole trip, but the whole day just got delayed and delayed and delayed. And I didn't end up leaving until like 7:00 at night. So it was already getting like kind of dark, kind of late sort of thing. And I realized I couldn't find my tent anywhere, because it's like, I'm not going to make this whole drive to Cape Breton at nighttime. It's like riding your motorcycle at night, not necessarily a smart idea. So, and I was already a little tired. So my roommate was like such a huge fan of Mech. Like she worked at Mech Mountain Equipment Co-op, always had this like nice fancy gear. And like, I was always kind of like the cheapo. I just go to like Canadian Tire and buy a cheap, like $20, $30 tent or something like that. And so I was like, you know what? My roommate's been hyping up all this stuff. She's let me use it. So I'm like, I'm going to go to Mech. I'm going to get myself a good tent because I camp a lot. So I went to Mech, bought this nice, beautiful 4-person tent for myself. 2-person is like really a 1-person tent, so I was like, I'll go 4, a little more room and stuff in there. And so got myself a nice tent, nice little pad. And I had to meet my friend in Sackville. Another reason why I was late. So met my friend in Sackville. And by this time, it was probably about 7:00. So I got my tent and stuff. And I'm leaving Sackville. And if you drive straight, I was like, okay, I'll drive for like an hour. It'll be starting to get dark. I'll find a place to camp. And I just kind of Google mapped. And if I drove an hour from Sackville on the Cobequid Road, it's basically like a straight line. And it goes to this place called the Knoll Shore, which is just outside Truro, about 45 minutes. And I was like, sweet, like by the ocean, it looks, I've never been there. I always kind of wondered, like, it's kind of like between like New Brunswick would be up here and like Nova Scotia's here. It's kind of that like channel of water there called the Cobequid Harbor or Cobequid Bay. And so I just drove for an hour, got there. It was already raining a little bit. It was getting dark. I was tired. So I was like, I'm going to find a place to camp here. So I pulled up, and it looked like a perfect spot. So like I parked my bike, my motorcycle, take all my stuff down, walk down, and it's just all nice, like long grass. And I'm like, okay, this looks like a good place, and I could see the ocean, and it was like far off, like it was quite far off, but I could still see it. And I was like, okay, kind of like, could the ocean come in here? Maybe not. I'm not sure. But I was like, there's grass everywhere. And like, I grew up near the ocean. I grew up in an ocean town. And like, where the tide comes in, there's always like driftwood, there's like seashells, there's stuff that the ocean drags in, leaves there. It was just grass everywhere. But at the same time, too, there was like a couple suspicious things where I was like, okay, like, beach grass that I've ever seen in my life always grows straight up, or any grass for that matter, it always grows up. All this grass was like pretty flat. So it was just like kind of flat, even though it was like long grass. And I was like, okay, that's red flag number one here. And I actually like touched the grass and like licked my finger, and I was like, this tastes salty. And I was like, that was red flag number two. And but at the same time, there was like, I'd say about 20 feet away or so, there was like this really deep channel that was like all mud. And I was like, okay, that's probably where the ocean comes into. And like, I'll wake up to the ocean, probably just gets a little bit of ocean spray on the grass, like not a problem, right? So I was like, frigate, this is my spot for the night. It's already getting late. I'm tired. This is it. Set my tent up in there, just kind of like on Facebook or whatever for a minute on the phone, and just like ended up passing out, like super tired. And I'm just laying there asleep, and this dewdrop, anybody who's ever slept in the tent before, like it just condensation builds up from breathing and whatnot, just fell down literally and just hit me right in the forehead as I'm laying there. And it like startled me for a second. And then I was like, okay. And I just roll over. And Jordan, like when I rolled over, this is when like I realized that like something was not at all right. Like I literally felt like I was on top of a bowl of jello. Like it literally everything in the whole tent was just moving like this. And my Aunt Karen used to have a waterbed, and it was the exact same sensation as laying on her waterbed. Like I was literally just moving like this. And I like realized right away what happened. Like the tide had come in. I obviously did not set my tent up in a good spot, and I didn't peg the tent down. So like I had because I had my backpack in there and all my stuff. I had my motorcycle boots, my helmet. Like I wasn't worried about blowing away or nothing like that. But because I didn't peg it down, the whole tent was literally floating on the ocean. And it's like pitch black, middle of the night. I have no idea what time it is now. And I start to panic like a little bit at first because I'm like, holy shit, man. Like, am I floating out into the Atlantic Ocean right now? Like, have I floated away in my tent? Like, I had no idea. And it was like a moment of terror there for a second. But luckily, I practiced meditation a bit and stuff. And like, I found my breath. And I was like, okay, just breathe for a second here. Like, you're in this situation now, so you got to do something. And the first thing I did after that was I just listened, and I could hear crickets chirping. And so I fell asleep to the sound of crickets. So I knew that I was roughly in the same area where I went to sleep. So then I was like, okay, at least I know I'm close to shore because I can hear the crickets. And then I was laying down when this all started. And then when I sat up, my bum just sort of sunk down, because all my weight was in one spot now. And I went down about 2 feet before I hit the ocean floor. So I knew I was in about 2.5 feet, like just over knee deep water, basically. So I was like, okay, it's deep water, but it's not like over my head. Like I'm going to be okay, probably. But like, I was just like, well, what the hell do I do now? Like, I got to get out of this tent. And so I'm just kind of like, okay, I don't know why I didn't think about this, but it was like late at night, middle of the night. I think it was like 3 or 4 in the morning at this point. And I have a backpack, but instead of taking my backpack like a normal person would, I took my motorcycle helmet, and like that's what I put my belongings into. And yeah, I was like, this is the best thing to carry my stuff in. Like put my boots in there, and my wallet, my phone, and then I like go and open the tent door just a little bit. Everything's okay. Open it again. Open it. Really taking my time here, opening it, and okay, the door is open. I'm going to make a move to get out of the tent. And like I go and I put my hand down in front of the door. And as soon as I do that, it goes down and then just the ocean just floods into my tent, man. Like it just like all the water comes in, my sleeping bag's floating, my jacket's floating, my backpack with all of my clean clothes is floating in the ocean. And I'm lit, like I sleep naked. It was a summer night. I'm naked out here now with all this happening. Just like it's like one of those moments where it's like literally felt like maybe this was a dream. Like it was just so epically crappy, basically, that I was in this situation.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you're anything like me and you love the anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting benefits of chaga mushroom and CBD, click the link in the description and use the code BEST15 at the checkout to get 15% off any product by Canoom Naturals. I've been using hemp and CBD since the beginning of my health transformation. It's really worked for me, and I'm sure you'll love it too.
Like, is this actually really happening to me right now? And so I was like, well, I got to do something about this now. So I literally get out of my tent, like it's full of water now. So it's like sinking and I got to try to get to shore. So I'm literally just naked in the middle of the night. And it's pretty cold. Like the water was pretty chilly, dragging my tent as it's like half sunken, all of my stuff floating in there, and get to shore and like climbing up over this like beach grass now that like it's kind of sharp and it's like coming at me, you know what I mean? I ended up losing my blanket while I was like floated away. I also lost my motorcycle jacket in the process, and it just disappeared on me in there. And I realized halfway like back, my motorcycle was parked up by the road, so it was fine. But I was like, I didn't have my keys. Like, I don't know where my motorcycle keys are. So I'm like, holy shit, man. Like, I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere here. Like, if I don't have my motorcycle keys, like I'm screwed. Like I'm absolutely screwed. So I get up, get my stuff up onto the road. Like again, it's 3 or 4 in the morning at this point, put on a pair of jeans and just start like breaking down my tent here in the middle of the road and like starting to get my stuff together. And just like at this point too, I'm kind of like, you know, this is like shitty beyond measure right now. Like this sucks, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is going to be funny someday. Like this is like a pretty wild, funny story. And so like my like metacognition was like, this will be funny someday. And so I'm there like trying to pack it up. And then like I see like lights coming down the road, like a car is coming. So I'm like, oh my God, like somebody to help me. Like, thank God. But then I kind of like look around. I'm like just in my like jeans and like all of my belongings all over the road. And I'm just like, I don't want anybody to see me right now. So I like scooped up all of my stuff and literally like hid in the bushes like a little child. So I was like, I didn't want nobody to like find me or to like see me in that situation. So I like hid, like just praying they didn't see me. They didn't. They went. So I get back out, literally like pretty cold at this point, packing it all up, get all my stuff. Nothing's dry. All of my clothes, all of my belongings are soaked right through, full of like seawater. And I get on my motorcycle. I was so like dumb. I left my keys in the motorcycle, which was like a blessing, man. Like it was like they were just there. I was like, thank God. And so like start up the motorcycle and off I go. And it was so crazy because like looking at Google Maps, like the Knoll Shore and Truro looks so close, but it's like super windy roads and there was like a few constructions and things like that. Oh, still there. I just swiped you away, but I think we're still here.
Yeah, we're good.
And I friggin' drove. It was a 45-minute drive. Like I couldn't believe how long it took to get back to get to Truro from there. Like it was crazy. And it was like one of the most coldest, miserable times of my life at this point. Cause like it was just cold and miserable. And I'm driving like in a t-shirt, soaking wet. And like, honestly, I'm really lucky for this moment that I like literally I practiced meditation so much. So I just had to meditate and do some like Wim Hof breathing, just like breathing in and just trying to like stay. It was like a meditation that whole entire drive. And I was just so miserable. I roll into Truro and like, as soon as you get into Truro there's a Comfort Inn. And I show, again, it's like 4 or 5 in the morning at this point. I don't remember exactly, but it was late or early, however you want to say it. And the guy is just looking at me like, what the hell happened to this person? Like showing up. 5 a.m. to book a hotel room that I got to get out of in like 4 or 5 hours. And like, obviously looked pretty disheveled. Like, but he didn't ask. He didn't ask. Like, thank God. Like,
Probably
I'm just
happens all the time. Who
imagining.
knows?
Yeah, you're like, oh, another sucker camping in the North Shore. I don't
Yeah.
know.
There's like a
Yeah,
wall.
no, he was. Yeah,
A wall of
he didn't
fame.
ask me. Yeah, he didn't ask me, and I was really grateful because I was like, I don't want to talk about this right now. Like, I actually don't. And like, I think it was like something crazy too, like $130, $140 I paid for like the room for just like 4 or 5 hours. And it was just like, I was so defeated though. Like, I was like, I don't care, man. Like, whatever. Like, I'm going to pay it. And I go up and I took a shower, like a warm shower, the first thing I did. And it was like literally the best shower I've ever had in my entire life, just to feel my body get warm again. I rinsed off all of my clothes in the bathroom and like wrung them out and like hung them all up all over the hotel room and just went to sleep for like 3 or 4 hours, whatever it was. Like, honestly, the best little nap that I ever had in my entire life.
Oh,
But yeah, man, that was the story, you know, and it was a wild one.
yeah, man, that's just unbelievable. I cannot imagine like what was going through your mind, like just waking up feeling like you're on a waterbed and like thinking like, oh shit, like am I like in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean?
Yeah,
Like,
could have floated away. Like, I had no idea. Like, that's one thing I was like, man, Mech makes a hell of a tent. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, that thing was literally floating, like absolutely floating on top of 2 feet of water. Like, but as soon as I pushed it down, all the water came in. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's unbelievable. If the tent floated that much, like you literally could have ended up in the middle of
could
the
have went
Atlantic
anywhere.
Ocean. Like if you didn't wake up, like fuck, you could have been
Yeah,
like
who knows, man? Yeah, and if it didn't float, like I'm sure it would have woke up too. But I could have drowned in some weird way, you know, if I was super passed out. I don't know. Like, it
yeah,
was
that's
kind of
true.
like turned out to a funny thing, like in the end. But like it could have went really bad. It could have been really, really wrong, you know.
Oh yeah, man. How far away were you from like the road, like in the
It
ocean?
was like it was
Mhm.
probably like about 20 yards or so. So it wasn't super far.
Okay,
Yeah.
wasn't that
Yeah.
far.
No,
Okay.
not too far at all. Like, but it was enough that like dragging that tent in the middle of the night, like not being able to see anything really,
Yeah.
like I just go follow the direction of the crickets. Like, it was
Yeah.
enough to like went naked while doing this too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I think the naked part just like I burst out laughing when I read that part. For those listening, like I really like highly recommend like reading what he wrote out like on top of this because as you probably know, like when we read something, we just develop like a different connection to it. And I feel like when I read it, like you can totally just see it even more from your own perspective.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
you can
And
just
it's the
imagine.
first time I told this story in a little while too. So it was like when I
Yeah.
wrote it, super fresh, all the details, and
Oh
like
yeah.
I wrote it in like a pretty funny and engaging way too. And
Oh
it
yeah,
kind of
it was perfect, man. And so Mech, like they reached out to you from what I hear. They right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So like it went so
Mountain
yeah.
Equipment
So
Co-op.
basically, Emma was the first person I told about it. Like, I told her because my phone was done. Like, it was like could barely send a couple of texts before it just like wiped out. And then I I told her, and she was obviously like dying laughing at me, and like, but I didn't tell anybody really. I told my sister because she was going to be the person who I was driving to in Cape Breton. So I was like a little bit delayed, like this is what happened. But like, luckily that drive to Cape Breton next day, super sunny, super beautiful. And like, I don't know if you've ever had like something like crabby happen, or if you've ever been like hung over from drinking, like doesn't I don't drink too much anymore, but I remember like you're so hungover you can't even drink water or food or anything, and then like that moment passes, and then it's like that first sip of water is just like heaven on earth. It's like the
Yeah,
best thing, you know, your body finally trusts you again. That motorcycle ride to Cape Breton was like, because I was warm and it was sunny, it was like, and such a shitty night before, it was just like such an epic motorcycle ride. I was just like so happy. Anyways, I get
I
to
bet.
Cape Breton. Yeah, I get to Cape Breton, start to tell a couple family members what happened and stuff, and then something happened with my motorcycle, completely unrelated, and it broke down on the drive at the very end of the drive. So I didn't have a vehicle to come back to Halifax, home for a couple weeks. So I booked a shuttle bus, and I was just like, I don't know, halfway to Halifax, and I was like, man, I'm gonna write the story out. It's 2 weeks later. Somebody might get a little laugh, like I said, wrote it out. And it was funny. When I like looked up finally, like it took me a little while to write it. I was in Truro, when I posted it on the shuttle bus, and I was like, man, it just happened just down there. And so anyways, posted it, and it just started going and going and going. And then like CBC reached out to me like to do a radio show the next day or that night, I think. And then like the Truro radio station reached out to me. Another Cape Breton radio station reached out to me. And then like I'm getting messages on my Facebook from like CBC News, the National, which is like the largest news. Like it's like Canada's news, you know what I mean? It's like the late night national news want me on their show for tonight or the next night. I can't remember what it was. And I was like, what the hell is going on here, man? Like I was like, because it's like, haha, this is funny. Then I'm just like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Like, why did I share this with the world? Like, I follow Halifax Noise on Facebook. It's like, man wakes up in the Cobequid channel naked, like floating. And it was just like, I was like, that's about me. Like, that's me. Like, yeah. And it was so, it just started going and blowing up. And then like, everybody's like, because I like, when I wrote, I played a lot like Mac makes a hell of a tent, it's like I could be your salesperson, I could be your spokesperson and stuff like that because this sucker floats, all these things, I was saying that. And so everybody's like, man, you got to reach out to Mac, you got to this and this and the Mac. And like, I tagged them in the post. I was like, they'll find me or whatever. And so like didn't hear anything. And then someone's like, just send them an email, man, you never know. So I was like, hey, send them an email, never heard anything. And so I found out that like literally a couple days after I shared my story, Mech had just gotten sold. So they just sold their company to a company in the United States. So they were going through this like massive like switches and changes and stuff. So I was like, well, I just didn't think anything of it, honestly. And then I moved out west to Victoria to be with Emma, my partner. And yeah, I was out there, and like 6 months after this had happened, Mech just reached out to me like, hey, like, we found your story. We heard your story. We knew all about it. Just going through these crazy changes, but we want to do something with you. And so I'm like, all right, cool. And then like our office is in Vancouver, which actually worked out great because like it's only a couple hours away from Victoria, taking the ferry there. So, after about a month of going back and forth, like wasn't sure if something was going to happen or not. We ended up going over there. I went over and we shot like a little commercial, basically like a reenactment. We found a beach there outside Vancouver. Didn't look, obviously like Nova Scotia, but it was enough to like be similar. And so they were just like, all right, man, like, let's just do it. They had a little script for me. They also got me to like freewheel the story while I'm doing all these things, like setting up the tent, and like camera crew, like the big mic boom and stuff. Like it was like, it keeps hitting in layers. Like, wow, this is funny. And wow, you're really dumb. Like, it's like, it keeps going back and forth between these two things. Like, but yeah, so we shot a little commercial thing with them. And last I heard, their plan was to like create it with like a reenactment, but they're also might do some animation with it. But it was a full day, man. We were there for 8 hours shooting different things. And then they were like, since you're here, do you want to like model some of our gear? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. So like got me in their gear and like, so like just did like some photo shoots with other people just to like promote their stuff on a whole other kind of like thing, And so they said to me, he's like, this type of project, it's not obviously one of our main ones, he's like, spring, we promote our camping, and then winter, we do skiing and stuff like that. So we have to do those things. He's like, this thing, it could come out in a month, might be 6 months, might be a year. Like, I don't know. It's one of those projects. We have all the material now. So he's like, I'll let you know when it comes out, but I don't know when. So that's all I know right now. We did this project. It's still got to get created. But I don't know if it ever will, but it's like, it's something.
When did you film that?
Oh, geez. It would have been probably in like, I want to say May, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Something like that.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Hey, there's still a chance maybe in the spring or summer 2020.
Yeah. Who knows? Like it might still come out. Yeah. Yeah. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like a funny story. So like, and And like literally, I calculated like based on how many shares the original post got, like it's gotten seen by over 1 million people. Like it's
Oh, really?
probably at least, yeah. Like if you think of whoever shared it, I think if just 50 people saw when they shared it, then that would be about 1 million people or something like that. Like, and like a news outlet in India shared the story, man. Like a news outlet in
Oh,
India
that's crazy,
had
man.
shared the story too. Like it was
Yeah,
crazy. Like the
that's so
funny
funny.
thing though is the one with the India story. It was like it must have been somehow like it must have just like copy and pasted the CBC article into like a either like a synonym creator or they translated it into like Hindi and then translated it back to English somehow because it was like so crazily written. Like it was like nobody nobody would ever write like this or talk like this or anything. It was just absolutely like insanity. And
Yeah.
it's like Hatcher direct quote, and it's like saying things that I said that were absolutely not at all like what I said. It was so butchered that it was like the funniest thing out of the whole thing that came up for me because it's like pink flag number 1, then it's like purple flag number 2. Like it was just like they're missing the colors up, and it was like using 2 toes of water, like instead of 2 feet of water. And it was just like it was just like hilarity, man, through the whole thing. Like it was epic. Like I couldn't believe it. Like I was like, what are they trying to say? I was like, why are they saying 2 toes? I was like, oh yeah, because I said 2 feet. Like it was really, really funny. But yeah, it was like I got hate too, man. Like from people online, they're like, oh, this guy's just like looking for attention. He made the whole story up and everything. And it was just like, oh yeah, man. Like people talking shit about me. Emma's brother, her older brother, was a really nice guy. I like know him well now because Emma and I were just kind of getting together. And he's like, Emma, like, do you think he's really like a good guy? Like he doesn't seem so smart. Like he doesn't know what he's doing. I was like, fair enough, man. You know, it's like it's not. Yeah, but it was funny. Yeah.
That's pretty funny. So did you go on like CBC and the other radio stations for an interview, or did you end up doing any of
Yeah.
this?
So we did interviews, like bombed out a few interviews with the CBC, and then one of the best ones was the local network in Truro. Like we just had like a good rapport. They were laughing, you know, and it was real fresh. It was just really fun. CBC one was like it felt like kind of rigid, but like the news one, they're like the CBC national, like the national news. They were like, can you recreate it somehow? Like, what can you do? And like, I'm in Halifax now. Like, we got to do it for tonight. And so I'm like, what do I do, man? And they're like, can you go in your backyard or anything? And so like, freaking just set up my little tent in the backyard, like of my like little tiny backyard in Halifax, and like recreate the story. And like, they cut that footage with like, I had no idea. Like, I just sent them like 10 minutes of stuff. I was like, I don't know what you guys want or what you're gonna do. Like, and like, so they're like, yeah, it's good. Like, it's good. So I'm like, what parts are you? I just had no idea. It was so funny. It was like a little 5-minute clip, maybe. They use it at the very end of the whole news, and it's like on a brighter side, kind of like they usually share a little funny story, and like they found some footage of the Knoll Shore and the Cobequid Harbor and things like that, and like cut it with my stuff, like unzipping my tent in my backyard. Like it felt really ridiculous, honestly. But man, that blew up, you know, and a lot of people shared that and stuff. And like honestly, like for all the hate, that wasn't that much. Like, but a lot of people got a pretty good laugh. So to me, it was all worth it sharing it, you know.
Yeah, man, that's just so fascinating to me. Like how crazy like it. First of all, your story is just crazy itself, and then how much it blew up is like a whole other tale of its own. Like
Yeah.
Equipment Co-op. I mean, honestly, they make a hell of a good tent. Like, hey,
Yeah.
if anybody wants to like skip out on buying a boat, just buy a freaking tent.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah. So, and they were great to work with, man. There was like a handful of us there, and like, you know, they were awesome. We had a lot of fun. They hooked me up a little bit of gear, you know, and stuff. So it was all good, man. Like it was all, yeah, I really enjoyed working with them and that. And yeah, it was just so funny. The one when reading that article in India, though, that was like what made it all worth it. Like everybody else got to laugh at me, whereas I got to laugh at that story because it was so ridiculous. I wish I could remember more of it, like what they said, but it was like
That's funny,
2
man.
toes of water. It was like complete gibberish, but it was like sort of telling the story. Like, because what happened, my friend was like works at a grocery store, and like he's like, man, did you hear about that guy like floated away? And then they're like, he looked it up, he's like, holy shit, like that was Grant. Like he knew me, like he's a good buddy. And then like he Googled like man floating or something like that. And for him, it was the first article that popped up was this one in India. So he's reading it and like he sent it to me, and then that's how I found it. But it was like there was so many articles written, man. It was crazy. Like, yeah, it was like the big talk for like a day or two on that. Yeah.
Man, you must have gotten like a lot of almost, I don't know, opportunities from that, like did it help for your business, like your online business and stuff, or what?
Not really, because it's like it's such a flash. Like it's how do you contain it? Like I've had a couple of things go. Like one time I had me and my roommates. It was like the dumbest thing, Kyle. I still blame you for this, but we were like 4 dudes in university. And like just in our last year, barely take care of ourselves. And like my buddy comes home with a kitten. He's like, "Hey, I got us a kitten for the house." And we're like, "Why did you get us a kitten? Like none of us can barely look after ourselves." Anyway, so we got this cat, and like, he's cute and stuff. So we're taking pictures of him in our like messy dorm house, basically. Like, where's Jim? Can anybody find Jim today? And this is like, and Ellen DeGeneres shared one of the pictures like on Instagram, and like the Ellen did, back in the day, when she wasn't as hated as she is now. And it got like instantly like 1 million views and like likes all of a sudden. But it was like, it didn't draw too much attention to us in any way. So it's like, this was kind of the same way, it was like, it's such a big flash, like it did get a little bit of people coming to my like page and things, but like not a ton. So it's just like such a quick one. Yeah.
They were just more focused on the story and stuff. Yeah.
Either way, it's like, I don't know, how do you spin it? It's like, by the way, this dumb guy who floated away in the ocean also teaches meditation and sea plants one-on-one therapy. Like, if you need some help, come to me. It's like, I didn't know how to, like,
I can advertise it on my podcast at least.
That's true. Yeah.
Do you have links to like those CBC, like that video they did and everything like that, or?
I haven't looked at it for a while, but I'm sure it's kicking around somewhere. Like they should still have it. Like it was on Instagram and stuff. Yeah.
I'll put that on here, and I hope by the time I release this podcast that your video is out for Mountain Equipment Co-op commercial or whatever.
Yeah. It'd be. I'm so curious to see. Like I haven't reached out to them or anything. I'm just kind of. I know if it surfaces, like somebody will tell me for sure. Here's this like. There's an actual floating tent now. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like it's actually sold. Met doesn't do it, I don't think, but it's like looks like it's got like little blow up tubes on the edges of it so you can camp on water. Like almost like every week somebody sends that to me. They're like, "Hey Grant, look, thought of you." Like,
That's funny, yeah.
I'm like, you're the 25th person.
They probably, whoever created that floating tent could have been inspired by your story.
They're gonna be like, "Wow, yeah, hell of a tent." Yeah.
But it's just crazy where life brings us sometimes, and like how just one thing leads to the next, and then just spirals into something totally new like that. Like because in that moment you were just like, "Holy shit, am I in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean floating on a tent naked?"
Yeah, it's pretty wild, man. And like I've done some traveling, and like I said, like had some like shitty things happen in life, so it's like, I'm a spiritual person too. So like, I know to like, just trust and like to go with the flow as much as possible. And so like all of the best things in my life have been these like moments of just like wild things, synchronicity sort of coming together and just like end up being like such an incredible story at the end of it. And like everybody like who does know me, they're like, "Oh yeah, I believe this 100%. Like I know Grant wouldn't make this up. Like this is something he would end up into, like so."
And did you say that this story kind of helped with you getting together with Emma?
So it was like her and I had just gotten together like 2 weeks before this all happened. Like, so we were building this like intense romance together. She's like the only person I've been like talking to for the last 2 weeks. And like, I think we were pretty locked in. So like, I feel like we would have been fine without the story. I think so. Like, but it was funny though.
I think after you heard that, she was like, "Okay, this is it. I'm doing it now."
Yeah, he's famous now. Like, yeah. No, it was funny though, because one of the things I got like criticized on is because how Emma and I got together was that we had a little camping trip up in Amherst here, where she's from. We're just outside Amherst. And so we're like at the top of Nova Scotia, where like if you got into a boat, you could drive to PEI. You can see PEI. Like, so we were camping there, for 3 days. And so then like a week later, the whole thing happened where I floated away in the Cobequid Harbor, which you can't get to PEI there. You got to go all the way down around Nova Scotia and then come back up. But when I rode up the post, I was like, I don't know if I was floating up to PEI. And then like people were like, oh, clearly he made this up because he wouldn't have floated to PEI. He would have had to go. But I was like kind of thinking I was on that shore in Amherst because that's where I was camping the week before when I was writing it. But there's little things like that. People were poking holes in the story and stuff. But
that's funny. I don't know. I believed it right away. And like, I think, I don't know, our intuition kind of tells us what's real and what's not. And just like the way you wrote it and like how descriptive you were, you could just tell that it was like, you
can tell that it was like genuine. You can like why would anybody think they're tired about this? Like
really, I think people are just jealous. They want to end up floating in the middle of the ocean naked. So
it's better when you plan it and it's all socially accepted and it's not just happens by surprise in the middle of the night. But
but it is good that there's some lessons out of this, like you use meditation and just like calming your nervous system down and just grounding yourself back into your body and into reality just by like, meditating and just knowing that it was going to be okay and stuff. Like, I think that's so important. And like you said, you felt like it was going to make a funny story someday. And I mean, it also brought a lot of joy in people's lives, honestly. Like, that's like probably the best thing that could have came out of it is like a lot.
Man.
It's just like such a lighthearted, like happy, feel good story. It's like, oh, that sucks. But I mean, no, you weren't harmed. Like you won't, like, nobody was injured. Nothing really actually bad happened except for it sucked being cold and scared for like a very short minute. But it's good.
The only like negative I draw is that my blanket and jacket floated away, and I felt kind of bad for that. I was like, "Fuck, that's out in the ocean now." Like,
it sounds like
I
that
wouldn't
was
have been able to take it anyway. Like, because like I was gonna take this soaked blanket, like it was just would have weighed like 50 pounds or more. Like, But you're right, man, and it was like, the only reason, like all those meditation things, meditation saved my life. Honestly, like I got into a motorbike accident in Thailand right after I did a meditation retreat the first time. And like, I ended up getting charged for the crash I was not at all responsible for. And like literally going off to jail, I thought, in the back of a pickup truck in Thailand. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, just need to trust and meditate and stuff. So I've learned to like integrate that in those moments. But like I said at the start, the only reason why I decided to share the story was like, as long as a couple people might get a laugh out of it, then it's worth it. And so a lot more clearly did. And so, life is so serious, as you see right now. It's so intense sometimes, sometimes we forget, like we need to be silly, like being funny and being like kids, remembering that like inner kid feeling, that playfulness in life, and just like, something I embrace wholeheartedly. So
it's too short. You got to just be more like a child and live in the present moment and not take things too seriously and just laugh and joke around. And they say the kingdom of heaven belongs to those who are like children. So
oh yeah, man, heaven's here, man, if we can just embrace that, we can create it here, and it's like, and you don't got to force it either. It's just honestly about being yourself as best as you can be, like it really comes down to that, I think. And to defend myself with this whole camping trip, I'd say at least 8 people commented it and be like, I had something similar happen to me. So it's like, I'm not the only one who had this happen.
Okay,
Oh, this is another thing too. I didn't write this in the story, but it was in the middle of the night and like kind of hazy. And I kind of remember there was like just lights shining on me at one point, like on the tent, like kind of woke me up. And it was like, I was like, oh, it's just a kind of a car moving, going down the road or something. But then it was on me for like an abnormal long time, and then kind of just left and pulled away. So like some local person must have saw my tent down there in the middle of the night and were like, this bastards in for a rude awakening. But they didn't wake me up. They didn't honk the horn or nothing like that. They were just looking at me. And like, I wonder if he'll be there in the morning or not.
Maybe he's just there
It
taking
stayed
a
me
rest.
this whole experience. Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny.
Maybe it was
man.
God just being like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell.
Or it could be aliens too, man. Who knows?
Yeah, aliens. Yeah, they're like, yeah.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. Sounds like a good way to wrap it up, man. I gotta get going and gonna go pick up my bandmate. We're gonna have a little jam. So
Nice.
thanks for sharing your story, man. I'll include all the links to that, and I'll get the story from you, and I'll post that to
Yeah, I'll send them over.
But yeah, thanks
Yeah.
very much, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
thanks for having me on, man. It was fun to tell the story again. It's been a little while, so yeah, it was good.
Oh yeah, it was fun. I appreciate it.